Well, moving on with the series, we move to episode 16 of season 1, The Hidden Enemy, which begins with a nice little quote, I guess, or maybe saying, "Truth enlightens the mind, but won't always bring happiness to your heart." But I'm not sure how this relates to the episode itself. It's obvious from the title that there's a spy, and obviously the knowledge of him would be disheartening, but quite frankly, we've already seen clones break ranks with the Jedi. Then again, I guess the spy in this episode, the clone, Slick, does have a point.
Only a Jedi would ask that. It's the Jedi who keep my brothers enslaved. We do your bidding. We serve at your whim.
Can you really argue that Slick is wrong, though? What are the clones but a slave race created to fight on the behalf of the Republic? What other purpose do they serve besides fighting? They don't do anything. If they desert the army, they have to be reported, and they have to be brought back. I'm not sure what they exactly do with clones that desert, but I'm guessing it either ranges from forcing them back into the battlefield, or potentially decommissioning them, which means probably executing them for being traitors. It's such a strange system to behold. I mean, on one level, you have the Republic, which is supposedly against slavery and has anti-slavery laws, yet has created a people that are just slaves that defend them from outside forces. And it also raises the question, I guess, in this episode at some levels, why Anakin doesn't object to the clones being slaves, or at the very least try to argue against the clones being slaves with Slick. Because Anakin was raised as a slave on Tatooine. He should know about the evils of slavery, and how does he not try to at least argue with Slick that he's wrong, that he's not really a slave? But on some levels, it's undeniable that he is. He has no choice but to be a fighter in the Clone Wars. He has no choice but to fight alongside his brothers and die by the hundreds, if not thousands, every day. He has to die at the whims of the Jedi, his generals. He has to die at the whims of the people like... Well, there are some people that have volunteered to fight in the Clone Wars, but many of them have much higher rankings as officers and stuff, which means he has to die at their whims too. He's been raised as a soldier, but he has no choice but to be one. Can you really argue that he isn't a slave? And no, you really can't. But does that mean Slick was morally justified in doing what he did, in damaging the base, and putting the rest of the clones at risk, as well as risking the lives of the Jedi against being slaughtered by the Separatist forces? And that's a much more ambiguous question on some levels, because you could also argue that Rex and the other clones just can't realize that they are slaves, that they're slaves through the whims of the Republic, and the generals that lead it. I honestly don't know. It also seems strange, like I said, that Anakin doesn't object to the clones being used the way they are, because it's obvious on many levels that they are, in fact, slaves. And you think someone that vowed to fight against slavery, that Anakin would not allow it to continue, especially for people that have to just fight and die and are considered practically disposable and unimportant. It's mind-numbing in a way, I guess, when you try to think about this stuff. It shows, maybe I guess you can argue that allowing the clone armies to exist like the Jedi do is proof enough of their sliding out of the light and more towards the darkness, and why they eventually collapsed. Because by allowing themselves to use the clones as they were, and allowing themselves to be dragged in this war, it allowed them to lose sight of who they were. And that led to their downfall at the hands of Palpatine. I guess I should give the episode credit for reminding us unambiguously that the clones are in fact a slave race, created by the Republic to fight for the Republic and die for the Republic, so that average citizens will not have to suffer during the war, beyond paying maybe higher taxes or something. And quite frankly, we never really see Coruscant suffer during the course of the war that much at all either, so apparently there's not much going on that doesn't involve the clones dying for the sake of other people being able to just go about their lives normally. It's such a strange dichotomy, I guess. The Republic would have anti-slavery laws, yet allow themselves to have an army that's comprised entirely of what would have to be considered slaves. And how do the Jedi somehow accept using the clone army, knowing that they are slaves for all intents and purposes. I don't know. I guess I should thank the episode for being very up in your face about the topic, because it gives you a clear reminder if you weren't thinking about the subtle problems with this issue already, or I guess not subtle problems, the subtle hints at the issue of the clones being slaves just from the second movie. Or even some of the third movie, where you watch them so easily follow orders, even though it goes against their probably own practical knowledge about the Jedi. They still slaughter them because the highest authority said to do so, because they follow whoever their master is. And I guess that's all I have to really say about this episode. It brings an issue that was already there and then shoves it down your throat. And does make you wonder if Slick was entirely wrong in doing what he did in order to obtain his freedom, even if it meant killing off his fellow brothers, because for all intents and purposes, one can say that many of them don't realize that they are slaves, that they've been programmed to see themselves as noble soldiers for the Republic. Guess the Republic's not so noble. Well, I guess that was obvious from the second movie. I'm not sure what tomorrow's episode's gonna be. I can't remember all the episodes of the first season. I didn't really watch all of them necessarily either, at least not in order. So yeah, until tomorrow,